You've been praying, and nothing's changing. The silence stretches longer than your hope can hold. You're tired of talking to a sky that doesn't answer back. And quietly, deep inside, you wonder, is God even listening? You've asked for healing, still broken. You've asked for clarity, still confused. You've begged for peace, still anxious. So what's the point of prayer if all you get in return is quiet? But maybe the silence isn't a sign of absence. Maybe it's a deeper invitation. You see, prayer isn't about getting everything you want. It's about growing into someone who trusts even when they don't. It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. And sometimes God isn't changing the situation. He's using the situation to change you. Because real faith isn't proven when prayers are answered. It's proven when prayers aren't. And you still pray anyway. It's the whisper that says, God, I don't get it, but I'm not walking away. And maybe that's what He wants most. Not a perfect prayer, but a present heart. God is not keeping score of your words. He's listening for your heart. When Jesus prayed in the garden before the cross, He didn't recite a list. He wept. He begged. He surrendered. That wasn't weakness. That was intimacy. So if all you can say is, God, help me, that's enough. If all you can whisper is, I'm here, He hears that louder than 1,000 perfect phrases. You don't need to impress God with language. You just need to show up. Raw, real, repeating the same thing if you have to. Because prayer isn't about eloquence. It's about endurance. Even when nothing moves, something is happening. Your roots are growing deeper. Your soul is learning to rest in someone beyond results. You're becoming steady in the storm, not because the storm stopped, but because you've learned who stands with you in it. Keep showing up. Keep speaking, even when it feels like a whisper into the dark, because in that dark, God is nearer than you know. Maybe you've believed the lie that unanswered prayer means God's not listening, but silence doesn't mean indifference. It often means invitation. An invitation to deeper trust, to faith that isn't built on results, but on relationship. Think of the widow in Luke 18. She kept coming back to the judge over and over, asking for justice. Jesus praised her persistence, not because she wore Him down, but because that kind of tenacity mirrors the kind of faith He honors. It's okay to be tired, but don't confuse tired faith with dead faith. Dead faith gives up. Tired faith keeps knocking, even with bruised knuckles, even when it feels repetitive, even when your voice shakes. God sees every time you come back, every time you open your mouth in prayer, even if the words don't come out right. He's already leaning in. Prayer isn't just about changing circumstances. Sometimes it's about how prayer changes you. The peace that comes, the pride that softens, the trust that deepens. You may not feel it yet, but you're not wasting your time. You're planting in soil that will one day bloom. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not the thing you're praying for, but what's happening in you as you wait. Maybe you started praying to see something change, but God is using the prayer to change you, to soften the places in your heart that had grown hard, to remind you that you're not the one holding it all together, to teach you dependence, not out of weakness, but out of surrender. The longer you wait, the more you may feel like your voice is disappearing, but in heaven, it's growing louder. Your prayers don't expire, they rise, they echo in eternity. Think of Zechariah and Elizabeth, years of silence, years of disappointment, but God remembered, and in the right moment, not early, not late, the answer came. John was born. But even before the answer came, God was present. And He's present now, in your waiting room, in your weary prayers, in your whispered hopes. So don't let the delay convince you that you've been dismissed. You haven't. He's still writing the story. And prayer, even the kind that feels quiet and unanswered, is part of how you stay close while the ink dries. Maybe you've started to wonder if prayer even works. You've prayed for healing, and the sickness stayed. You've prayed for restoration, and the silence deepened. You've prayed for strength, and still felt like you couldn't get out of bed. So you think, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe God isn't listening. Maybe this is just pointless repetition. But here's the truth. Prayer isn't about convincing God to act. It's about inviting Him into the places that hurt. He may not always change the situation, but He always changes how you walk through it. And sometimes, that's the bigger miracle. Not what shifts on the outside, but what stabilizes on the inside. Peace when the storm rages. Joy in the middle of pain. Clarity in the fog. That doesn't come from shallow words or well-crafted prayers. It comes from connection, from consistency, from staying, even when nothing feels like it's working. Because faith that only shows up when God is obvious isn't faith, it's comfort. But the kind of faith that prays anyway, that's real, that's deep, that's what holds when everything else lets go. Sometimes prayer isn't about the words, it's about the posture of your heart. It's sitting in stillness, not sure what to say, and knowing that even your silence is heard. Romans 8:26 says, "The Spirit helps us in our weakness." When we do not know what we ought to pray for, the Spirit Himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. That means even when you don't have the words, God still hears your heart. Prayer doesn't always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like crying in the dark, or whispering the same line over and over again. God, please. God, please. God, please. But don't confuse simplicity with weakness. Some of the strongest prayers come from the weakest places, from the honest places. Because God is not impressed by long prayers. He's moved by real ones. If all you can say is help, say it. If all you can offer is your tears, offer them. That's prayer too. And that moment you think He's not responding, it might just be the moment He's holding you the closest. You see, God doesn't measure your prayers by volume. He measures them by surrender, by the trust it takes to speak when you don't see results, by the courage it takes to keep showing up, even when heaven feels silent. Some prayers are like seeds. You plant them in faith and then wait, not always knowing when or how they'll grow, but still believing they will. Jesus taught us to always pray and not give up. Luke 18:1. Why? Because He knew we'd want to. He knew delay would make us doubt. He knew unanswered prayers would tempt us to walk away. But persistent prayer isn't about pushing harder. It's about staying open, staying honest, staying connected, even if all you say is, God, I'm still here. That's enough. Because prayer isn't a performance, it's a relationship. It's not about getting everything right. It's about staying close, even when everything feels wrong. So if you're wondering whether your prayers matter, they do. They always have. There's something holy about staying in the conversation when your heart feels tired, staying in the posture of prayer when your mind is full of questions, staying even when you don't feel it. Because prayer isn't just about asking, it's about becoming. Every time you come back to God in prayer, you're being reshaped. Not just your circumstances, but your soul. You're learning to trust deeper. You're learning to depend, not on outcomes, but on God's presence. That's the real miracle. Not always the answer, but the nearness. Not always the breakthrough, but the intimacy built in the waiting. Sometimes God delays the answer so He can give you something better than what you asked for. More of Himself. So don't give up. Your words are not wasted. Your tears are not unseen. Your waiting is not empty. He hears you. He's with you. And in the silence, he's still speaking, just in a different way. Sometimes the answer to your prayer isn't a door swinging open. It's a heart being softened, a pride being broken, a wound being healed beneath the surface. You wanted change around you. God is working within you. That's why you feel tension, because deep transformation doesn't happen without it. And prayer isn't a formula, it's a fire. One that burns off the excess, one that refines the parts of you that couldn't hold the blessing before. So if your prayer hasn't been answered yet, don't assume God is silent. Maybe he's preparing the answer. Or maybe he's preparing you. You don't plant a seed and walk away because it didn't grow by morning. You water it, you wait, you trust the process. And prayer is like that. Some answers bloom in days, others in years, but all of them are growing something in the dark that will one day rise into light. So keep praying, even when it hurts, even when it's quiet, even when you don't know what to say, because God isn't just waiting to answer you, he's waiting to meet you. God never meant for prayer to be a performance. It's not a speech to impress him. It's a space to meet him. With your honesty, your weakness, your longing. He's not moved by perfect words. He's moved by surrendered hearts. So come as you are. You don't need the right mood. You don't need a quiet room or the perfect mindset. You just need a moment, a whisper, a breath that says, I'm here, God. Even if I don't feel you, I'm here. And he meets you there, not with loud applause, but with quiet presence, the kind that doesn't rush, the kind that stays, the kind that reminds you you are still his. And even if everything else in your life feels uncertain, your connection to him never has to be, not because you hold it together, but because he does. That's the promise of prayer. Not that you'll always get what you asked for, but that you'll never walk through the asking alone. So pray again, even if it's just a whisper, even if it's just tears, even if all you can say is, God, help. That's enough.